I am Monika Kwapisz presenting the paper Privacy Concerns of Student Data Shared with Instructors in an Online Learning Management System on behalf of myself and my co-authors, Avanya, Kohli, and Dr. Prashanth Rajivan. If you are an educator or a student, you probably use Canvas, Moodle, or Blackboard daily. These are examples of learning management systems, or LMSs. LMSs facilitate interaction between students and instructors, disseminate course materials, collect and grade assignments, and administer assessments, among a growing number of other functions. One of these newer functions is learning analytics. Analytics uses large amounts of student data that is sensitive and valuable to use in algorithms to optimize learning. It is a deliberate use of data, which is in contrast to learning management system data, which has an obscure purpose but shares personal information and logs directly to instructors. Both collect large amounts of data, which are sensitive and valuable, so they are worthy of privacy scrutiny. The privacy implications of large amounts of data being shared for learning analytics have been investigated by many other researchers, but data sharing internal to the LMS platforms has not been scrutinized as frequently. The main research we take inspiration from was published in the 1990s when LMSs were first emerging. The problem space can be understood via a vignette from one of these early papers. Gianangelo tells the story of a professor who he met at a conference. The conference took place on a weekday, so the professor was using an electronic bulletin board as pictured for the students to submit work that they had done in class during his absence. One student decided to forego attending class by submitting his reading response the night before he was supposed to be in class. However, the professor checked the electronic bulletin board before class to find that this particular student had submitted the assignment early. The professor's response to this was to send a message to the whole class calling out the student and requesting a response written during class as instructed. From Gianangelo's point of view, this demonstrates the instructor as a disciplinarian in a panoptic surveillance relationship. The panopticon is a metaphor used by Michel Foucault to describe surveillance and invoked by Gianangelo and other early commentators about the student-teacher relationship facilitated by LMSs. The panopticon is a circular prison arranged around a watchtower with a bright light, so the prisoners have no way of knowing when the jailer is observing them. This leads to internalized self-monitoring. Similarly, in an LMS, the instructor can see all the information about their students, but instructors do not know when they are being monitored. The panopticon offers a definition and understanding of surveillance that will become useful and relevant as we discuss our results. The student data shared with instructors in LMSs is personal and detailed. The power relationship between instructors and students makes students' privacy more vulnerable. This combination of factors leads us to take a critical eye to privacy in LMSs. This leads us to our research question. What are students' perspectives and concerns regarding the amount of personal and detailed information visible to instructors and others in positions of power, such as teaching assistants, in an LMS like Canvas? Students' official university photo is viewable by the instructor online. Instructors can see the last date and time a student logged into the LMS. What time students submit their assignments is also visible, as well as when the student went back to look at a submitted assignment. There is also a variety of types of information available to instructors about specific page views on the LMS, which we call engagement activities. We conducted 32 semi-structured interviews at the University of Washington using an interview protocol we developed through pilot interviews. We recruited students via a flyer emailed to them from their academic advisors. The interviews covered multiple topics about privacy on LMS, but this paper is just about one section of the interviews where we asked, what would your privacy concerns be if your instructor could see, and then the types of information in the previous slide. We also asked a broader question about engagement activities. Transcripts of the interviews were qualitatively coded using inductive thematic analysis. We chose an inductive approach because of the exploratory nature of the work, and we chose a thematic analysis because of its accessibility, flexibility, and open-endedness in identifying patterns. Our process entailed 2 researchers conducting open qualitative coding with a focus on finding themes in the participants' explanations of their privacy concerns. Then the researchers met to compare thematic codes to reach consensus on a set of codes and their definitions called a codebook. This process was repeated iteratively using in vivo qualitative analysis software and resulted in an inter-rater reliability of Cohen's kappa of 0.77 between the two researchers using the final codebook. Each coded theme in the transcripts was analyzed by finding subthemes, which we will interpret and present the results of in our paper. We found that 47% of statements students made were concerned about the sharing of the type of information we were asking about. The 53% that reported not being concerned also included students who are apathetic or neutral. But we will be focusing on the study on concerns because it is a better way of understanding the privacy protections that could be put in place to address those concerns. The types of information students were most concerned about was last login and engagement activities, and the themes that appeared in the concerned category were consent, misrepresentation, not necessary, and vulnerability. We defined consent as a student expressing wanting to know more about what information is being shared, as well as describing not knowing the information as a concern. Students said they should, wish, and would like to know more about what information is being shared. They also would use the words informed, consent, and permission unprompted. For example, it makes me uncomfortable that instructors can see something that I didn't explicitly give permission to. Misrepresentation was the largest category of concern when participants felt that their information available to instructors may create a bad or inaccurate impression. They described strong concern. Participants imagined that their instructors could use data to gauge their level of effort and understanding, but a lack of context could result in an inaccurate assessment. If my professor could see how long I was on each page, I guess there's just a level of self-consciousness, I guess. That would come with that and be like, oh, am I spending too much time on this? Are they going to think that I don't understand the material or something? One type of misrepresentation was fear of being considered a procrastinator. One student speaking about last login said, I tend to do my assignments very late, most of the time procrastinating, I guess. I did not want to see my professors seeing when I logged in, or not for returning in an assignment 30 minutes before it's due at 5 a.m. Not really, I don't want them to be looking at me like that. Participants were concerned about the impression they were making on the professor due to lack of context for their actions. I think they could just make guesses and claims about you without actually hearing what's going on. So there's just kind of basing information off of stuff that you don't really know much about and you can't really control too much. The misrepresentation theme is rooted in students perceiving the information available to instructors as telling an inaccurate or unflattering story about their academic performance. The not necessary theme is defined as the student considering the information being shared as unnecessary, too much information, or having no purpose to the student. One student said, I think that goes back to why is that information being collected? That just concerns me because I don't understand why that's necessary and why that information is being collected. Some participants generalized that nobody was doing anything bad on Canvas, so surveillance is unnecessary and intrusive. For example, I don't think they should be able to see my engagement activities because maybe we just want to see what to do in the assignment or just read the instructions. We're just trying to get our work done. We're not doing anything bad. So yeah, I don't think they should care about those things. Students repeatedly wonder why their data is being shared. Their inability to discern the need for data collection, having not considered it before, made students more concerned. In contrast, students who could think of a justification expressed a lack of concern, as you can see in the paper in the genuine need category. We use the vulnerability theme to capture specific feelings of intrusion and details that are uncomfortable to share. Students described their last login and engagement activity visibility as revealing work and sleep habits, being watched, feeling too close, too much information, or being a more intimate activity. Some students felt vulnerability about their photo being unflattering. In one instance, this was connected to appearance discrimination, which an international student from Korea described being a major issue in Korea. The other types of discrimination, each mentioned once, were based on being an international student, pronouns, disability, and wearing a hijab. An interesting nuance in the conversation about vulnerability is that students may feel disempowered, thus unable to fully express their concerns, as articulated as follows. Oh, maybe just when someone is doing something a little bit creepy, but then you don't really want to create more trouble out of it. It's like, okay, that was creepy, but you know what? I'm not going to think about it. The vulnerability theme describes the emotional reaction to being surveilled by the LMS. In the metaphor of the panopticon, students feel vulnerable because the technology they use leads to an uncomfortable internalization of surveillance. Students feel uncomfortable being watched, especially when there are aspects of themselves that they feel are vulnerabilities in the education context. Our analysis revealed synthesis themes made of general and cross-cutting sentiments among the main themes. The most significant of which is surveillance. The combination of privacy issues and data sharing is comparable to a surveillance relationship between the instructor and student. The combination of lack of transparency about which data is being collected and the lack of knowledge of when and how the instructor is checking the data facilitates a power imbalance and feelings of unease and self-monitoring that are the hallmarks of this dynamic. The most salient findings about student concerns for data sharing on LMSs are the concerns about students being misrepresented and lack of justified necessity for data sharing. The sentiments of students internalizing this surveillance in the form of caution using LMS and shame about their habits amount to a panoptic dynamic. Our work carries forward the idea of researchers interrogating LMSs at their very inception. While we recognize the importance of work on privacy and big data and learning analytics, we encourage more research about the personal effects of data sharing, especially on the student experience. Students are entitled to privacy, comfort, and transparency in the education technology systems they have no choice but to interact with. Our work also indicates the need for future study about how minoritized students, such as transgender and other LGBTQ students who may feel vulnerabilities in the education environments, are affected by privacy issues. Our suggestions for addressing surveillance and privacy issues are to foster transparency and mitigate power dynamics by educating instructors on their role in the privacy landscape of data sharing in LMS, establishing both classroom and institution-wide policies on data sharing, and communicating those policies to all stakeholders, but especially students. Students and instructors may vary in their awareness of their privacy and data in LMSs. Instructors may not know they have access to the data or not know how to use it appropriately, but structure needs to be put in place for understanding and using student data appropriately in a way that is transparent and privacy preserving to all stakeholders. We also encourage more research into privacy dashboards, which is one way of enabling privacy autonomy. Thank you for your interest in student privacy on LMSs and your attention during this presentation. Please take a look at some of the wonderful papers I referenced and contact me if you have any questions.